Hi and welcome. In this brief demo, I'm going to show you how to generate POs and also how to approve them. So you would have received an email with your username and password and a link to this login page. Once you're logged in, you'll be taken through to what we call the task panel. And this is where all tasks that require your attention will be found. So if you approve purchase orders, all POs that require your approval will be found here. And if you generate POs, once a PO is approved, you'll be notified and a notification will be found on your task panel. What's really nice about the system is all purchase orders, once approved, a copy is sent and a notification is sent to the person who generated the PO via email. And also, if you are required to approve a PO, you'll get an approval request via email. Now, what's important for people approving purchase orders is sometimes if you have hundreds of emails every day, it's an absolute nightmare to manage loads of POs coming in as well every 5 minutes. So what you can do is you can set up what we call an email digest. And you can choose a specific time and day when you can approve and process your emails. So under task settings, you can choose to receive task digest and you can tell them how often to send it. So deliver every 1 day and say 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. That means you won't get an approval request for every single approval for every single PO that's generated, but you'll get a digest or a list of all purchase orders that were generated since the last time you approved POs, and you'll receive that email at a time that suits you. Very much like you might have dealt with paper purchase orders. Maybe you approved or rejected POs at a specific time of day. You'd get your stack of paper POs and at 10 a.m. every morning you would process them. So now you can choose when you deal with your POs. Also to mention if and when there are urgent purchase orders, the PO generator can just contact you directly and you can log into the system and approve or reject the POs directly from your task panel. That is the task panel. Now, this might look a little bit different to you. If there are multiple productions that you have access to, when you hover over productions, you'll see the list here. If you only have access to one, what we call a PO book or one production, it'll just say ePod dashboard. And you click on that or you hover through to ePod. And this takes you through to your purchase order dashboard. And you have multiple different tabs along the top here. Some of you might not see matched and invoiced tab or matched and paid tab. That's a feature that's not necessary for some productions. The main ones to note are draft, and this is where all purchase orders that you have created but haven't submitted for approval yet are, and you can come back at any point and finish the purchase order. Rejected and cancelled POs, also relatively self-explanatory. The difference is a rejected purchase order is someone in your approval chain has rejected your purchase order. And if they have to leave a reason why it was rejected. At least you'll know why and you can make the changes. So for example, this purchase order over here, tires for 20 cars. Let's say it was, the price was incorrect, so it was rejected. You can move this purchase order back to draft and make the changes and resubmit it for approval. Pending purchase orders are POs that are somewhere in the approval chain. They might not have been approved by anyone yet, or they might be pending someone specific in the approval chain. So for example, this purchase order over here, you can see that DH, myself, Damian Heupler, has approved it, and now it's awaiting Christina's approval. So at a glance, you can quickly see where a PO is in the approval chain. Finally, approved purchase orders are POs that have been fully approved. You can email them directly to a vendor. You can view the PDF. You can even duplicate a purchase order. So if you've got say a PO that you generate on a weekly basis for something, or you've got very repetitive purchase orders, you can always duplicate it and it will keep all those details. You can make the changes and resubmit that PO for approval. Modify gives you the functionality of making changes to the PO that don't affect the amount or the vendor. So maybe you want to update one of the line items details, maybe you coded it incorrectly. You can use the modify functionality to make those changes. Amend lets you edit any of the details for the purchase order. But what it'll do is it'll force the PO through the approval chain again. So everyone has to reapprove that purchase order. At the far right here, we've got a little T, which is very helpful. It's what we call a trace history. And it's the full story of your purchase order. When it was created, when it was submitted for approval, who approved it, what email addresses it was sent to, what the approval chain is, etc. So there's full accountability and story behind every purchase order. Now to generate a PO, you just hover over New Order and you click on Purchase or Rental. For this demo, I'm just going to create a purchase order. And it opens up your PO Edit panel. Here you can enter the details of your purchase order. Let's say stationery for production. And then you can just press the tab button and it takes you through to the next editable panel. And let's say you know what the name of the vendor is, and if they're in the system you can start typing in the name and Edwards Office National pops up. So I can just select that and it's got all of the details for Edwards Office National. If you want to create a new vendor, you can't find it in the system, you just click on New Vendor and you add in all the vendor details. If you notice that any of the vendor details are incorrect, you can just edit them right here and it'll save a version of this supplier for you to use. Then as you scroll down, you'll see who the ordered by person is. That's you. It's not changeable. It's the person that's logged into the system. By default, you are also the requested by person, but you could request on behalf of someone else if you felt like it. And you can also change which department you're generating a PO for. So every department has its own approval chain. So you can quite easily generate a PO on behalf of art department, for example. And what will happen is it'll go through the art department approval chain. Then over here is where you enter your line item details. The first thing is to start entering in your budget code if a chart of accounts has been provided. What I did there is I just pushed the up or down arrow on my keyboard, and that pulls up a predefined chart of accounts if it has been imported. And I can start searching for the code that I need. Alternatively, I can just start typing in the number that I need and then select it from the list. An asset, you can mark every line item as an asset or not. In some situations, you'll be forced to either choose yes or no. This ensures that you can provide a full asset list at the end of the production. Quantity, also self-explanatory. It's the number of units that you're purchasing. The date in day, month, year format, 29th of the 11th, 2020. I noticed that I also forgot to change the currency back to South African rands. So once I apply South African rands, it also adds a default VAT at 15%. You can choose if a line item is VAT applicable or not. So for example, let me add 500 Rand in here for this line item, and I have applied VAT on top, so it adds the VAT. If we have another line item that's not VAT applicable, you can just uncheck it and it'll only sum up the applicable amounts. What I can also do is click this little arrow to the right and it'll insert another line item. And I can also press the plus button and it'll actually copy down the details and the codes so that I can just save myself some time from repetitive information. I can mark this line item as non-VAT applicable as well, and this one is 1,000 Rand, and I've left this VAT off on this line item. Finally, we've got comments. Public comments are comments that are visible on the purchase order. So the 3 most important words in the film industry: this is urgent. If I click on the top here and say view order PDF, I can see what state my purchase order is, seen as a PDF, and I can also see that all public comments are included in the PDF. I can see my approval chain at the bottom here, and I can see the amounts that I've entered. If I make any changes, let's say please order immediately, and I click on refresh, it'll actually show me the latest details for that purchase order. Now, internal comments are only seen by the people in the approval chain. So maybe you want to provide additional support for generating this PO, but it doesn't need to form part of the purchase order PDF. You can add those comments in here. Accounts and production are doing a lot of writing and need more stationery. How do you spell stationery? There we go. Then I can also upload any supporting documents. So let's say I have a PDF that I'd like to include. I can just click on a PDF, upload that PDF. So now if I click on refresh on my PDF, you'll see that it'll add the additional pages to that PDF. So all quotations and other supporting documents form part of the same file. Then once I'm happy with the PO, I can click on send for approval, and it will be sent to the next person in the approval chain. And if I click on pending over here, you'll see there's the PO that I've just created, and now it's waiting for Damien's approval. That in a nutshell is how you generate a purchase order and send it for approval. If you made a mistake at this point, you can move it back to draft. If someone has already approved the PO, you have to amend it because it'll need to be reapproved by everyone in the approval chain. Thanks, and I hope this helps. Goodbye.